This is War Weekly with James Patrick and Robert Cibis. We review the news of the week and give deep analysis into geopolitical topics that you won't find anywhere else.
A new agreement has been signed. It's called the Israel-Greece-Cyprus axis. And this, in fact, seems to be a provocation to the Turkish government. And I think that this is also indicating that tension is rising, even though Mr. Erdoğan isn't really that aggressive towards Greece. But still, you have a Greek military modernization on the islands. You have Turkey expanding its regional military posture. And you have some people around the president of Turkey who are quite aggressive. There's the Minister of National Defense, the communications director, who are both attacking Greece. And the most extreme rhetoric came from an advisor of Erdoğan. He said that if Israel planned to target Turkey with US help, Turkey would first occupy islands in the Aegean, then liberate western Thrace, and even occupy all of Greece and then take all of Cyprus. And this advisor is called Karagül. And he seems to be very close to the president.
It just seems strange to me. This advisor says if Israel aggresses them, they'll attack all these other countries, but not Israel.
That is really weird, isn't it? Why wouldn't they attack Israel?
Well, I mean, if you look at the Erdogan's posture vis-a-vis its neighbors like Syria over the last 10 years, it's really supported Israel's objectives. I mean, Assad was the main opponent of Israel, neighboring Israel. The Turkish intelligence was the primary force helping overthrow Assad's government through supporting ISIS and HTS. Erdogan's son was famous for financing them through buying the oil. So it was really CIA and Mossad and Turkish intelligence that were instrumental in creating ISIS, funding ISIS, arming ISIS over the last 10, 15 years. They were instrumental in playing a role in overthrowing Assad. So although Erdogan speaks heavy-handedly against Israel,
Holocaust Netanyahu government, which is ruling a society that wants to reap the roots of its oppression, imposes genocide on its neighbors.
He said in the parliament and in several places that if Israel acts against Turkey, it'll wipe it off the map. If it threatens Turkey with nuclear weapons, Turkey will destroy Israel. So because of Erdogan's strong words against Israel, not actions but words, there's been increasing media hostility towards Turkey in Israel's newspapers, saying, Erdogan's trying to create a Ottoman Empire 2.0. Ottoman Empire was a multi-ethnic empire that had all kinds of ethnic groups in it. It was diverse with Arabs, Kurds, Turks, Jews, Armenians. And then the Young Turk movement took over in the very early 20th century and genocided the Armenians and made it only about Turkish ethnic groups. So it alienated all these other ethnic groups and quickly precipitated the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and freed up Palestine for the creation of Israel. There's a lot of evidence that, and I've read diplomatic cables from the U.S. at the time that Ataturk was Dome Jewish, and that actually the project was very foundational to create the state of Israel. And in critical battles with the British, the Young Turks withdrew and allowed the English to capture Palestine. So this Israeli-Turkish relationship goes actually further back.
Wow, that is really very multi-layered, I have to say.
Recently, U.S. envoy Barak was warning basically the Israelis, saying you really don't want to be messing with Turkey because it's a formidable military power. I mean, just to give people, it's a very old martial culture. There's 1 million standing army. There's another million reservists. It's 2 million standing army. It's way bigger power than Israel. It could destroy Israel if it really came to it very quickly. So I think that Israel is really, again, punching over its weight, trying to pick a fight with Turkey. But this is the narrative in the Turkish newspapers. They're saying, "Oh, the Greater Israel Project is expanding and threatening Turkey," and in the Israeli papers, they're saying the Ottoman Empire 2.0. Erdogan's trying to create Ottoman Empire
It seems foreseeable that NATO will break apart. Both countries, Greece and Turkey, are part of NATO, and if the United States go out of it or are pushed out of NATO, what will happen to Turkey? Will it go out of NATO too? I mean, it's the second largest army within NATO, and this is not just about manpower, it's really about equipment. They are developing new missiles, and they have a very modern army, which is, of course, bigger than the ones of the neighboring countries.
NATO appears to be breaking at the seams. The Iranians are making clear they're not going to tolerate any Western military influence or presence in this theater. So Turkey's in an interesting position. If NATO breaks apart, then where does it stand? What is the political makeup of the country in reality? If Erdogan's secretly pro-Israel, then he'd be contrary to wanting Iran to succeed in this conflict. But ostensibly he would be more pro-Iran based on the position he's making towards his population and publicly and saying, you know, that in regional partnerships with Iran. So I think Turkey's in a delicate position, and Erdogan is in an even more delicate position. When push comes to shove, there could be a change of leadership and a rapid change of policy too. Similar to like Saudi Arabia, if the Saudi crown fell, there'd be a very different political makeup there. They would be taking very different positions.
For a long time, Greece is one of the European countries with the biggest percentage of spend for military compared to the income of the country, and now it's getting even higher. So I think, yes, attention could come to a culminating point.
Well, it could be a way for oligarchs to start a regional conflict between Turkey and Greece, and then try to roll that into this broader Iran conflict.
Yes, and it's really fascinating. It's so true what you're saying, that Turkey threatening to attack Greece if Israel attacks Turkey is the most weird statement to make, and shows a little bit like as if Israel would own Greece and you would just destroy a toy of Israel. It's a very weird way.
That kind of reminds me about some of the Iran war, because the Gulf Research Center stated that Iran has launched 8,695 missiles and drones, but only 1,357 were at Israel. So Israel is the main opponent of Iran here in this conflict, but yet it's looking like 50% or 20% of the bombs are actually attacking Israel, its main opponent. So Iran also has been disproportionately attacking Gulf states. Now that's where all these U.S. military installations are, but still, it's similar to this Turkey threatening Greece thing. If Israel attacks Turkey, Turkey will attack Greece.
I think it's a strategy of escalation, and there we come to the next point, because you can see these conflicts as wars in a way we learned them to be happening in school, but you can also see them in what is happening and what is really doing as a system. The first and biggest effect of the war of Israel and the United States against Iran has been a so-called shortage of oil and gas and fertilizers, among others, and this led to measures like people should stay at home and work there, measures like you shouldn't travel. There's a rationing for jet fuel all over the world. You have a centralization of decision making because of the narrative of the global crisis. So this is why some people say the war against Iran is in fact a COVID 2.0. You have a digitalization of global activities. You have an attack on small and medium-sized companies. You have a centralization of power, and you have a destruction of many of the geopolitical structures so that you can reshape global societies same as you could with COVID 2.0. So I see that maybe the closure of the Strait of Hormuz isn't a side product of this war, but maybe one of the main aims of it. And not just because it might give some advantages to the United States compared to the other countries because they are self-sufficient with natural gas and fuel and fertilizers, but also because it's in fact a crisis which catalyzes towards a regionalization of the world and a centralization of power.
It appears like we're getting the net zero rationing, this sort of poor quality of life that we've been promised by the likes of the World Economic Forum of, oh, you can't drive your car, you have to stay within your 15-minute city. So it just makes me concerned. The International Energy Agency boss warned 5 days ago that Europe has 6 weeks of jet fuel left, so maybe no European vacation this summer, huh?
That is something. And of course it pushes the electrification of the traffic, which has been very much hindered by the decision-making of the consumers. A lot of them didn't want to buy electric cars because of obvious reasons. They're quite expensive and you can't drive long distances easily because you have to have pauses to charge the battery. So this is now continuing to be pushed forward. And what I see with the cars, just to give an example, if they are electric, you can stop the traffic if you turn out electricity very easily. You cannot stockpile electricity. And this is different with gas for the cars because you can stockpile it, at least to a certain extent. So the dependence is high, and electric cars, in addition, of course, are surveillance machines. They are equipped in a way that they see what you're doing, where you're driving. It's linked to a person, and it's also part of a mesh which is global and surveilled by satellites. So the surveillance, of course, is extended by all of these means, and this will also be happening in the shadow of the global energy crisis, which is a side product, and I would argue one of the main reasons this war against Iran is happening.
Where this war will most likely be going on for a long time. Trump said he was asking for did an extension of the ceasefire, but is continuing the blockade, contradictory action. So this war is likely to go on for a long time, increasing the shortages of all kinds of things that will bring the global economy to its knees and achieve this sort of net zero, sort of COVID 2.0 policies.
So after all, as all wars, this war is also a class war, but not just in Iran and the countries who are in fact directly involved, but for the whole world. And same as with COVID, it's not that important what the real necessity is, economically speaking, but the narrative. I cannot judge of how much rationing we really need now in Germany or in France or in whatever country we go. We can trust this or we can question this. And as same as with COVID, I would say, let's question this.
Please support us in these weekly reports, and we'll continue to bring them every week.